A wantrepreneur is someone who dreams of starting a business and tells everybody about their grandiose ideas, but rarely ever takes any concrete action to bring them to life, often due to fear, a lack of motivation, or maybe they're just waiting for the perfect time to begin. They often focus on planning and peripheral action instead of things that actually move the needle forward towards their goals. The godfathers of our time, or the Hermoses of our time in relation to business, talk about this period in the journey of every single entrepreneur in which they must put their head down and work for even years on end. Gary Vee had a video in which he talked about the tendency of the young generations to judge things, even ourselves, over a very, very short period of time. And one example of this tendency is our constant obsession with MRR, or monthly recurring revenue. And this tendency can sometimes lead us astray from what we initially set out to achieve. The reason why I wanted to document everything was because I tried coming up with a plan. And this was a plan to build a specific brand. And after studying the people that came before me and that are many, many steps ahead of me, and some people that are entrepreneurs even a few steps ahead of me, I've came up with a plan that I think is consistent with a lot of them. And one person that comes to mind that I take a lot of inspiration from is a guy named Daniel Iles, who is one of the industry leaders in the content agency space. And if you're not familiar with content agency, it's basically every aspect of content just basically done as a service for someone else, from ideation, coming up with the ideas, to scripting, to editing, and the post-production and actually posting the content for a different business to help them with like revenue generating activities. Now, this individual in particular, Daniel, used to be an accountant, and then while he was an accountant, he made finance content and accounting related content, and eventually he gained brand deals with famous companies such as PayPal, Dr. Pepper, and many other brands that you've probably heard of. And then once he realized that content could be systematized or automated, he ended up sitting down for one day and recording 6 months worth of content. And after that period, he was able to repost that 6 months worth of content 3 times over, meaning for 18 months, he pretty much didn't have to worry too much about his content, and it was completely automated. During that period of time, not only was he able to like spend time with his family, friends, I'm sure, and other responsibilities, but he also started a production company, which was successful. And then after that, he started his content agency. Now, the fascinating thing in particular is its fast growth. So in the first year, or in the first few months, they went, I think the first month was like 50K, and then they went up to 100K, and then like 300, and then 1 million, and then they just jumped to 3 million, and then 5 now, and I think probably 10 in the foreseeable future, in the near future. And obviously they have a great team, they have a great philosophy, they have a lot of experience, but the overarching theme that is required to acknowledge when assessing this is his overall brand that he created which was like the base for the rest of his company. In business, once I heard the parallel being drawn of such type of growth to the way that a bamboo grows, I think it was, which is it grows underground for many, many years, and then once it sprouts out of the ground, it grows at a very, very fast rate. Similarly, another person who I think fits this exact same criteria is a well-known salesperson who is Matt Ryder. I think the story goes like he got married, and then he realized once he settled down with his wife in a house that he didn't have enough money to pay rent, and then he worked like an absolute machine, 18 hours a day for 3 different time zones. He was working sales jobs, and he did that for a year straight. And then coming out of that year, he differentiated himself with that work period from the entire industry to an extent that they could never catch up to him. Now, this brand that I want to make, I want it to work in a similar manner, but I don't have much time. If I have to judge this goal based on time continuum, I'd say 2 years max is by the time by which I want to achieve the goal, and the goal on which I don't put too much stress, but I think I can just toss 100K a month into the titles of my YouTube videos. That is not something I think about too much, or I will even use to judge myself in a sense. I think the only thing that matters right now is the input and the overall KPIs that I need to hit to be able to reach that goal. But the goal is just a number to me. I don't put much thought into it, and it's all just surface level. So over on TikTok and YouTube, what I want is for the content to be more so focused on documentation, a little bit of cinematography, and a little bit of philosophy and life stuff. And over time, I think if your brand does grow, which in the case of Hormozy, you do end up inherently expanding. For example, Hormozy initially started talking about gym stuff, and then as his brand grew, he started talking about relationship stuff, and then eventually entirety of life stuff, because his audience grew, because he essentially became the niche. And I don't think I need to become the niche for that to happen. I just think over time, it is a good thing to have an all-encompassing image of yourself growing on the internet. Overall, on the Instagram side, which is going to be different from my TikTok and my YouTube side, I would like that to be more so focused strictly on business, which is where I'm going to have most of the conversions and stuff like that happening. And the way I really want the 2 years to look is right now, before the next year starts, is really like a planning phase, in which it's not really planning, it's just raw action being taken on coming up with and scheduling all the content required for the next 6 to 12 months for the next year. And then that way, while that content is going out, I can just strictly focus on onboarding on more people and taking care of building a team and trying to build a team. And then while that happens in the first year, I'm going to be more so focused on my brand as well. And in the second year, I'm basically going to outsource all the components of my own brand, and I'm going to more so focus on the business side as a whole. But throughout that whole process, I do think that it's definitely a valuable thing to document. A lot of people suggest, like I think I've heard a video of Alex Hormozy saying this, that you must first accomplish some grandiose thing before you decide to move on to showing your entire life to the internet, or getting on the internet, or even making content in the first place. Like, there must be some profound thing that you have done, and that way it's going to allow you to have a much larger and quicker rise in the internet game once you eventually do start making content, because you have something else that's great about you outside of the content in the real world, which people can actually admire about you. But I think that is a perspective of the past. I reject that concept on the basis of the numerous people in the marketing space that have started their brands simply by talking not only about the information that they have about marketing, but talking about their smaller, not so profound businesses that, and the information that they get to learn and the experiences that they get to learn just by going through them, even though they're not like some huge thing that is worth loving about you. If someone sees you for the first time, like there doesn't need to be like some insanely big wow factor as a requirement for someone to get on social media. And I definitely do think that there's also a relatable aspect to that when people do end up seeing you. And once again, coming back to this, acknowledging this concept of eventually your life will become all encompassing. If right now I start by at least documenting the things that I'm going through and the experiences that I'm going through, not only am I going to be able to look back at them alongside other people, but it's also going to show a side of me that isn't so solely focused on the business aspect of things. And one good example of the consequences of not doing so can be like the thing that happened with Kaisenhat recently, which is like he stepped off the gas with whatever like entertainment content he was doing. And then all of a sudden he got a bunch of backlash. And that was, I think, largely because of because he didn't actually share that aspect of his life separate from whatever his craft was. But overall, I think as I do get more and more comfortable, not only with the camera, but with the idea of myself that I'm trying to not only portray, but who I actually am, then I think it's most definitely going to help me fulfill whatever this goal is to the best of my ability. But overall, I think that sets the theme clear for what is to be recorded in the near future. And I hope I get this series going, or I continue this series going consistently for the next 2 years at least, before taking a break from it. That is my overall goal, and I hope to achieve it. And pretty soon I'm going to be releasing more and more specific intricacies of it, because right now it might not sound as if it's the most realistic thing in the world, but I can assure you that it is a lot more closer to being realistic once you hear the level of volume that is actually taking place behind the scenes. And then hopefully we will all get to see that unfold. And overall, my message stays the same. Good luck on your journey.